Let's get real, let's get vulnerable, let's tell each other horrible things. You can only be so much to other people, you can only be so much for other people, you can only do so much for other people, but you gotta be true to yourself. Take a chance and take the quiz.
It's right below bed.
Right to your door.
It's right below bed.
Alone anymore.
It's right below bed.
'Cause you got so much love.
It's right
to
below
give.
bed.
Relax.
Oh man, I blew it at the dance contest today. If I just danced a little bit better, maybe I could have taken home that prize. I deserve that prize. Well, at least there's the birds in the sky to remind me that life can be okay, you know? I wish I could fly. I wish I could have flied on the dance floor today. Maybe I would have won the thing instead of all those cheaters. They don't even know how to dance. Should have been me with the grand prize. Oh wow.
the majesty of these moments gets me every time. Every time. The pre-show really does something to me. It's fun. It's whimsical. Then there's a lot of waiting. Then there's a lot of, title cards and stuff. And then the show begins, or the class. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of What's Your Story? I can see now that I'm going to need to turn my ring light up. So there we go. Intimate moments. Okay. So we are into it. We have done week 1. I've done TV recap. I know it sounds silly, but I'm telling you, it is a way in the door. Also, we've done some rants. A little bit of housekeeping before we go any further. If you are in the Pupils Delight membership level, please do get your assignments into me. The email address, you have been sent it. I will review all that stuff and give you some thoughts in the coming days. If you are not, we have a Discord page. I don't exactly know how Discord works, but there's a Discord something. So you can share your work with your fellow students in there. And that is that. I don't know how Discord works. I might try to teach myself. I might start lurking. I don't know. So all right, I'm gonna start. Hold on. How do I do this? I'm gonna start. I'm gonna share my screen. Here we go. Screen sharing tips. I don't need those. Okay. Application. There's this. Share. Okay. There we go. Now I can no longer see myself, which is a great thing. But I can see that we are in What's Your Story week 2. By the way, if there were some other windows up in there, one of them was my chat window. My friend Damien sent me today's Instagram from Britney Spears, where she said, a lot of people want to know how my summer was. And the best thing that happened this summer was 2 friends threw me in a pool. So that's her story. I think yours might be a little better. So this is week 2 of What's Your Story? Tonight, we're going to face off against my mortal enemy, the Who Cares chorus. I'll tell you more about them in a little bit. But basically, the point of tonight is I'm going to tell you how I fool myself into doing my best work. I have terrible habits. I am disorganized. I have awful self-talk. But I have got myself into a point in my life where I have to write things. So I've had to figure out ways to make myself do it and to get over the self-talk and to trick myself into doing some good stuff. And I'm going to share some of those tricks with you tonight. I'm very excited about it. Also, we're going to talk to Joel Stein. He is truly, I think, as far as tight, pithy, comic, personal essays go, there really is nobody better right now. He is truly churning out great work at a stupefying rate. He is a columnist for Time magazine. I got to know him as a columnist for Time Out New York back in the 1990s. He has written a couple of books, the latest of which is called In Defense of Elitism. And it is absolutely worth reading. It is just an excellent, excellent book about the times that we live in and how we got there. Okay, so here's the deal. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit in my own story because I really had to face down my personal writing demons at a specific point in my life in 2015. So we're going to jump ahead to there. When we left off, I was starting to get paid as a writer, $75 at a time, doing TV recaps for Vulture. That led to a column at Vulture where my head for detail when it comes to pop culture and my inability to shut up about my own personal stories dovetailed. I started a column called Somewhere in Time. My editor, John Sellers, who is now at Thrillist, named it, I guess, after the Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour movie. But it was basically like a rundown of charts, a specific time in history. This week was Ariana Grande was born. Here's the top 40 from that week. And I would go through bit by bit and make jokes about all of the artists and then sort of as I got more comfortable at Vulture, weave in some personal stories. And I found that the more that I did that, the more I put a little personal touch into it, the more the readers seemed to react to it. I got more comments. I got more engagement. The editors seemed to like it more. That in turn led to a book deal. I say a book deal. I got an agent. That agent said, you should expand this and make it into a memoir. Took me through the process of writing a proposal, which maybe we'll get to, maybe we won't. But basically got me into a position where I had signed a contract to write a book. And I learned something very quickly in this process of signing a contract to write a book. There is a rule in the world of publishing, and I'm going to, it's kind of an insider thing. I shouldn't tell you, but you're here, so I'm going to. Big rule in the world of publishing is when you sign a contract to do something, you are legally required to do it. You just have to do it. So I had signed a contract for not a lot, but enough to keep my nose above water for a few months to write something. And I said, great, this is a dream come true. This is the culmination of a lot of work I've done for free and a lot of work I've done for very close to free. This is my writing dreams are coming true. I get to write a book. And then I signed the contract. And then it was like, well, now I have to write the book. Now I actually have to write the book. And I've never done that before, and I don't know how to do that. And I don't really know anybody up close and personal who knows how to do that. The deal when I signed the contract was that I had a year to finish it. And I initially heard that, and I thought, that's absurd. It's never taken, I can crank that. I can do this in a month. It's my story. I can do this. They gave me a year, which is pretty standard. Excuse me. I'm having a Topo Chico. I found that for the first 3 months of that year, I didn't do anything at all. I sat in front of an empty page, and I didn't do anything at all. I walked my dog so much that when, like, after about 3 months, when I would say, hey, you want to go for a walk? My dog would be like, you go ahead. I'm good. I fixed things in the house. They're all broken again because I don't know how to fix things in a house. I did everything but write the book. Because at home, there is a great deal of distraction. We are all stuck there now, so we know this to be true. So what I did was I decided that I needed to get out of Los Angeles. I needed to not be where my friends were. I needed to not be where my dog was. I needed to not be where my possessions were. I needed to pack a small bag and go away for a couple of months and just do nothing but crank it out. So winter was approaching, and I said, I'm going to be a Russian novelist. I'm going to go to Chicago. I had a couple friends there who had some friends who had an attic apartment that they Airbnb'd out. And I said, what do you say I come in for 2 months of a punishing Chicago winter and just do nothing but grow a long beard and drink whiskey and write? So I actually have a photograph of myself from that period. So that was my deal. I sat in an attic apartment in a place where I didn't have any friends, and I tried to write. And so what I ended up doing after a couple days was making friends and doing, again, everything I could possibly do to distract myself from writing. Did not take up pipe smoking. That was a quick thing. So after about a couple of weeks of still not doing anything, I said, this is ridiculous. They're gonna put me in jail if I don't write this book that I'm under contract to write. I have to actually do it. So I glued my ass to a chair in an attic in Chicago, and I started writing. And the stuff that I was writing was terrible. Aimless, pointless. It simply didn't work. And I noticed something was happening when I sat down to write and when the words started to appear on the screen. In my head, I heard a sound. It was faint at first, but then as I continued, it grew louder and louder and louder. And it was a song. And the song went, "Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares?" It kept getting louder and louder and louder. I was writing about my life and my story and my thoughts and my feelings and my like struggles and journeys. And all I could think was, who cares? And it truly was, in that moment, I realized it was the thing that had kept me from trying harder as a writer earlier. The idea that the story that I had to tell was not worth telling. I think you've probably been there. If you have faced writer's block in any way, that is essentially what is the root of it, is like, who cares? If you're stuck, you're wondering who cares. I immediately realized I was in a battle with the Who Cares chorus. There they are. That's a quick rehearsal that they're doing with their choir director. The Who Cares chorus is absolutely relentless. They are probably the top-selling vocal act in the world. They have a huge song called Who Cares? I sang a little bit of it for you earlier. They will play in your head endlessly. It is very difficult to hear anything else when the Who Cares chorus is really vocalizing. And this is them, like, you know, they're taking a little break. This is after rehearsal. It's a night out. But like their message, guess what? Even if they're not singing into a microphone, it's still there. You have something to say? Who cares? Who cares? This is, again, taking just the tiniest little break from rehearsal, but they still don't care. So in that moment, when I realized and identified my journey and my fight and my endless battle with the Who Cares chorus, I started to think, what is this? Like, how do I get past this? Like, this is a final boss level battle with my worst self-talk, and I have to win because I already spent the money that they gave me, because it wasn't all that much, but it would break me if they asked for it back. So I started to think about who I was doing this for. Who was I writing this book for? And the first few thoughts were demographics, right? Like people roughly my age, or, you know, queer people who grew up Catholic, or, you know, whatever. Vague ideas of an audience. And it hit me that that's not a person, okay? Like males 25 to 49 is not a person. Gamers is not a person. Pop music fans is not a person. You cannot create an intimate experience with a demographic. And what you're trying to do when you sit down to write a personal essay is to create an intimate experience. You cannot do that with a theoretical audience because they're not real. You don't know what they're going to respond to. So what I'm about to tell you is going to sound unbelievably basic, like crazy basic. And this is that. Okay. An audience is not a person. Therefore, it is almost impossible to have an intimate moment with an audience. So the next thing I'm going to tell you sounds very basic. It is very possible that writing teachers have been saying some version of this to their students for a long time. I didn't take that class. It came to me in the attic of a freezing cold apartment in Chicago in late January 2015, I guess. This simple thing, which has made all of the difference in my writing. And I really, really think it'll work for you, and I hope that it does. And again, I'm sorry that it's this basic, but it is. Talk to one person. I was blocked and shamed and scared to tell my story to the world, or to book buyers, or to whatever, because that's daunting and scary, and it's not real, and there's no real way to do it. I was in the middle of telling a story about something that happened, or writing a story about something that had happened in high school. And I thought about who I would tell that to. And the person that came to my mind, if you are a Dynasty type, if you've seen my show, The Friday 40 at the Dynasty Typewriter, which will be back when the world returns to normal, I swear to God, or maybe we'll do it virtually. That's beside the point. I host it with my good friend, Scott Gimple, right? He's 2 weeks younger than I am. We basically are like birthday twins. We grew up kind of in the same way, playing the same role within our respective high schools. He has the Jewish versions of my Catholic parents. We are very similar. And because of that, we tell stories to each other. And it's, they're not stories maybe that the whole world would love, but because we kind of get each other's references, we tell each other stories and we make each other laugh. So the problem became, the objective shifted from being tell the world or tell book buyers or tell, suburban females 18 to 34. It became tell Scott this story. And that worked. It started to flow out of me because I had an audience of one, a friend. So that is the first step. Find your one person, okay? Who do you love to make laugh? Like, whose laugh is music to your ears? Think of a specific person. When something crazy happens to you, when you're, something bizarre that happened in traffic that you saw. There's a real thing. 2 weeks ago, I was at Ralph's grocery store in Los Angeles. Guy 5 feet away from me in the aisle took his mask off to cough. If the seatmate on an airplane was a lunatic, when you land, who is the person you want to text every detail of that story to? Or I guess because we're not living in 2005, I guess who would you get the go-go to start telling the story to? Who's the person you are dying to tell? Focus on that person and tell your story to that person. Now I've taken some images from Shutterstock. I don't know if you noticed that, but I did. So there's a laughing guy. I really love that they did not Photoshop out the line of spit that goes from his top left canine to the bottom lip. That ropey strand of saliva is still there. So Shutterstock didn't do anything about that. So there's your lesson about being a perfectionist. Fuck it, that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to use a lot of stock photography in this presentation. The title of this stock photo is Handsome Middle-Aged Hoary Senior Man Over Isolated Background, Smiling and Laughing Hard Out Loud Because Funny Crazy Joke, Happy Expression. Ropey line of saliva. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Even if you have a very cool relationship with your mom, that person is probably not your mom. There are job requirements for this role, okay? The important thing for you to do when you're writing is to be personal. You have to be intimate. You want to tell truths that are difficult and that are complicated and that are sometimes filthy dirty. And also sometimes you will have to use dirty words. Sorry, but that's true. And almost, even if you have the coolest mom, even if your mom knows how to do the dab, like an Ellen audience member, your tendency is to sanitize things for your parents' consumption because you don't want them to worry about you. There are probably details of your personal life that they will never know, and that is the natural order of things. You need to be free and honest, and you often cannot do that with a parent. I love mine, but it doesn't always work. We will get into the fact that you will live in a world where maybe your parents will read what you have written, not for them. You'll survive, but we'll get to that later. This title of this stock photo is Senior Old Woman Dressing Elegant for a Special Event. I personally think there are a couple more details that are more salient than the fact that she is dressing elegant. Anyway. Also, it's probably not somebody that you are trying to impress, right? You have to show your whole real self. You got to focus sometimes on the stuff that is broken and embarrassing. Also, It might not be a perfect story. It might not be perfectly constructed. So if you are sending it to, if you're thinking about sending it to somebody who is an established writer or storyteller, you're forgetting the fact that they have an editor. You are judging your own work, like your draft, against their final product, which you must never do. If you're thinking about how well you come off to somebody who you want to impress or somebody who might be able to hire you, you will not be truly honest. It's just the way that it goes. If you're thinking about your spelling or your punctuation or whatever, your eye is off the ball of what the story is. So you can't tell this lady. Look how impressive she is. She's beautifully dressed, and she's collected so many sandwiches. I can't compete with that. I can't compete with that. So I'm not going to tell her my story. Also, I don't know who she is. But I do know the title of this stock photo is Impressed, Terrified Lady Looks with Shock from Under Sunglasses, Cannot Believe Her Eyes, Holds Breath, Finds Out Surprising News, Wears Elegant Outfit, Poses Around Many Delicious Jam Toasts. That's too much. That is too much for you. Just focus on a friend. Okay. So here's the thing. Not every story is going to be for the first person who comes to mind. So what you got to do is pack your bench. Yeah, we're going to do some court packing. So I told what I could tell to Scott, and it really helped. It got the drafts done. It got the chapters out, some of them. But then some, I was like, well, this kind of, Scott and I might be too similar in this respect. I started to get into the social impact of the Catholic religion and how it affects young people. I have a good friend who is Irish and Catholic, and we bond on some of that stuff, but Irish people approach Catholicism in a different way than American people. And Midwestern American people approach it often differently than Boston people. So for some of that stuff, I said, all right, tell John. John's the audience. And it started to come out. It didn't come out perfectly, but it did come out because I could imagine myself talking to this person. So let's talk about packing our bench, okay? Casting our roles. Maybe you want to tell a story to your friend from high school who stayed in your hometown. Maybe you want to get across a basic point about city life or about the artistic process or something. And you know, your friend Josh stayed home. He's doing tractors back at home. There's probably somebody in your life. If you chose an impractical path, there's definitely somebody from your upbringing who kept their life very practical and very much living very much the life that you knew growing up. You will share some reference points because you're similar in age, but maybe this guy doesn't think about them or fixate on them as much as you do. Maybe he doesn't understand the life that you've chosen. Sometimes you have to remember that the things that are basic to you might need some explaining to a larger audience. So think about your friend, stay in your hometown. Or conversely, right, there we go. Maybe it's your very busy city for, oh shit, I'm sorry. That was very, title of that stock photo, agricultural engineer in a field with a laptop computer and a tractor plowing the soil. Pretty straightforward. Okay. Also, it could be your very busy city friend if the situation is reversed. Maybe you're the one who stayed where you grew up. Maybe you know somebody who made the move to the big city and is capital I important. Her day is packed. She would love to talk. Maybe she'll pencil you in for next Thursday. But you need to grab her attention right away. You need to convince her why your story is worth her time. I am facing this problem right now. I'm doing a story about a musical act that is popular with younger people who I am trying to make understandable to less young people. And people who might tune out right away because they see it and they're like, it's not for me, I don't care. So my job immediately is to make them care. So I think actually about my roommate from New York. He and I lived together in our 20s. He has now become a super successful businessman with a place in Tribeca and a wife and a couple of kids, and he doesn't have time to immerse himself in popular culture the way that we did when we were 27 and playing the Goo Goo Dolls album really loud in our apartment. Okay, so sometimes you gotta think about someone who's very busy, who you just need to hook them in right away. Again, it's not busy city people It's, Emily, right? Title of this stock photo is female office worker is tired of work and exhausted. She has burned down and has depression. She also has a boss who puts an alarm clock in her face, like an old-timey alarm clock that just feels abusive. I don't like it. Okay. Or could be your nephew. If there's a cautionary element to a story that you're telling, if you're talking about some bad behavior that had consequences, if you're talking about early attempts at freedom that backfired, tell it to somebody who you would like to see learn from your mistakes. Maybe you don't have a nephew, but your friend's kid, someone who went to, who's in ninth grade at your high school now, someone who you care about, someone who will want all of the details and keep all of the secrets, maybe somebody you're trying to create a bond with, right? So if you're telling a cautionary tale, the idea of telling a cautionary tale can be a little bit daunting. But if it's, tell little Cody over here why not to do cocaine, maybe it's a tiny bit easier. Title of this stock photo is stylish teenager boy wearing a checkered shirt, sunglasses on skateboard in city over orange background. Again, extremely straightforward. Okay, so here are the requirements for a place on your bench of potential audience members, potential story hearers. They must all be people who root for your success. You want them to be good people who have your best interest at heart. People who will forgive your mistakes. If you admit to some terrible behavior, you shouldn't feel bad about it. Generally, people you feel good and comfortable around. People who elevate you a little bit. People who you use your bigger words around, who make you a better version of yourself. People who have told a story that make you laugh. You want to be able to rely on their sense of humor as well. Also, should be people who don't know that they're on your bench. This should be a thing that you do not tell that person. They might start to feel a sense of responsibility, and that's just not fair to them. So, once you know who you're talking to, look, we picked out Agnes. Agnes is the person we are telling the story to. Once you know who you're talking to, you can begin to know what you want to say. And again, this is extremely basic, but I had to teach myself this lesson kind of late in life. It's very, very important. It is this. Know what you're saying. Know what you're saying. I know you think you know what you're saying when you sit down to write, but sometimes what you're saying can be vague, or it can be kind of overly broad, or sometimes you can confuse the details of the story with the message of the story that you're trying to tell. So very quickly here, I want to talk about outlining, because that can help you to get to what you're saying. Outlining, very important tool for the writer. It acts as a skeleton. You hang the meat of your story on this skeleton and keep you on track in a very crisp and efficient way. It is the habit of the disciplined artist. And for that reason, I truly never do it. What I do instead is I keep a notebook nearby. I write down things that come to mind when I think about the subject that I'm writing about. Details, specifics, feelings I've had, sights that I've seen, sounds that I have heard, clothes, things that I have, CDs that I have bought, just things that are connected to it. I write those things down just in a list, no organization, just in a notebook on a couple of pages. And I try, once I am writing, to weave them in. But ultimately, you should be able to boil every essay that you write down to one sentence, okay? And this sentence should include two things: the big fact and the reason why you are the one to talk about it. So let's go through a few examples. TV recap. Let's say we're writing a funny TV recap. Last night's premiere of The Bachelorette is an example of how reality sex television works in the time of COVID. And three of these guys remind me of guys I would have dated in my 20s, right? So you got the thing, you can write about the thing and all the facts, but then a couple little things that you throw in there that explain why you are the person who is telling the story and why you are uniquely qualified to do that. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster was a tragedy, and it was the morning I realized that my dad was as scared as I was. Tell the story about the morning that the thing happened with all the detail that entails, but the personal part is your relationship with maybe a teacher who wheeled the TV in and turned on Channel 4 or whatever. It is about those personal relationships and what they did to you, what seeing all that stuff did to you. My first concert was Duran Duran in 1984 when they were at their peak. And when John Taylor's sweater fell off one shoulder, I felt a brand new feeling. This may or may not be my own personal story. This may or may not be the color scheme from the Rio album. But it is, you can write all of the stuff that you know about Duran Duran, but then you weave in the personal thing of like, I was different at the end of this concert than I was at the beginning of this concert. So here's why this works. You are obviously not going to write a one-sentence essay. Nobody wants to buy that. But even if you do outline, you can write something that doesn't have a strong central message. You can also write something with a bunch of strong central messages, because an outline, while helpful, does not, like you're just kind of boiling every point down and you're not really making a decision on what is the key one. And if you have a whole bunch of central messages, to the reader, you basically have no central message. But a strong one keeps you in control of the story. You control the details rather than them controlling you and you just being tossed around by the idea of the story. A strong central message gives you a tree to hang your ornaments on. It's been a skeleton. It's been a tree. Stick with me. I'm mixing my metaphors. Detail, the ornaments that you hang on the tree are very important because the universal is in the specific. All right. Universal is in the specifics. When you give specific details, that is when a stranger can read it and say, I'm hooked. So let's say we're writing about a high school dance. Of course, you're going to write about what you're wearing and the color and all of that. But get into it. Was it new? What kind of condition was it in? If it felt starchy and stiff, is that because it was new or because it was the first time you had worked up the nerve to wear it? Was anyone else around you wearing it? Did they look better than you? Did they look worse than you? And how does all of this reflect on you as the central character? What does it tell us about you and your emotional trip through the high school dance, which I hope somebody writes about? If we're writing about a date story, and we're, of course, going to get into the kind of car that they drove or you drove. Was it theirs? Was it a parent's? Was it new? Was it used? Had it just been washed? How clean was the windshield? What CD was in the CD player? Did they look proud of the car? Was it a thing to show off, or is it just a thing to get to work in? And again, how does this all reflect on the other character in the story, and how does your reaction to it reflect on you as the central character? All right. Go nuts with details. Once you know what you want to say and you start doing it, go bananas with the details. Don't spare a single one. As you reread and revise and edit, then you can get rid of the details that don't illuminate your key sentence, that don't reflect back on the thing that you want to say. By the same token, if you find that you are giving a lot of details about something that has nothing to do with your key sentence, take a moment, rethink your key sentence, and maybe revise based on that. So, for example, if you're working on a dating story and you find yourself adding all sorts of comments and details about your mother, then, maybe if you're working it into this TV recap of The Bachelor, we get rid of, and these guys reminded me of guys I would have dated in my 20s. There goes. And comes last night's premiere of The Bachelorette. It's an example of how reality sex television works in the time of COVID. And now I understand why my mom didn't approve of the guys I dated in my 20s. The story changes a little bit. Pay attention to the details that you're putting out there into the world. Now, here is what is magic about this. Details place us in a specific time and a place. So everyone's had a brand new polo shirt. And if they haven't had a brand new polo shirt, they have emotions about never having had a brand new polo shirt. Everybody knows somebody who smelled like Dracar Noir. Maybe it was them. Maybe they thought they smelled fantastic. Everybody knows the opening guitar chords of Smells Like Teen Spirit. Maybe the sound excites them. Maybe it reminds them of the time they got their head put in a toilet. Doesn't matter. And if these are dated references, which they absolutely are because I am old, then your attitude on them makes them relevant for readers of different ages. You can, through your attitude about someone who smells like Dracar Noir, can click with someone who is 15 years younger who will be like, oh, that was the Axe body spray of its time, right? Your remarks about the details, your observations about the details, illuminate your character and inform your voice. Also, critically, details give you things to edit out. You cannot edit a blank page. I've tried, it doesn't work. So if you write a whole bunch of details, you at least have stuff that you can start trimming and pruning and turning into something beautiful. If you speak to one person who you know, if you keep your most effective details into the story, and if you keep your attitude on those details clear and strong, a magical thing happens, which is that you will have created an intimate moment with an audience. Some stranger somewhere else in the world will notice a detail, will have picked up on something that you were like, should I put this in? Yeah, let me put this in. They will have an emotional connection to it that will hook them in, and you will have expressed something that they've never seen in print before, and they will have an emotional connection to your writing and to you. You cannot start out trying to create an intimate moment with a stranger, but you can trick yourself into doing exactly that. And thereby, you will have defeated the Who Cares chorus. Now, I want you to know, they will be back. They are like a horror movie villain. They will absolutely be back, and they will take you down. Well, they'll try to take you down again, but you will defeat them in the same way the next time. So let's get into some assignments for next week. Here's what I want y'all to do for me. We're going to continue first thing in the morning, writing for 20 minutes. But this week, in the class summary that I will send out tomorrow, I'm going to give you not topics to write on, but lists of things just to get your mind working on detail and on the stories that you've lived through, right? There's like an improv game, a warm-up before you go on stage, where it's like you're with, Skits and Biddles, your improv group, and you're about to go on stage, and it's, hey, 5 new breakfast cereals, 5 new dances, whatever, and just off the top of your head, you have to, create 5 new breakfast cereals, crackling Christmas, whatever, right? You do that thing, it gets your mind going. The first of these, I will tell you now, 1 full page of huge, important global events that you have lived through, okay? That will be for tomorrow morning before you check Twitter to see what terrible thing happened in the world while you slept. Okay, assignment number 2. Pick one of those world events that you lived through and put yourself in it. I do not mean to make yourself the captain of the Challenger, okay? I do mean tell the story of the event, but keep the focus on you. What happened to you that day? What small or large thing did you learn that day? Do not be afraid, if it's a tragic story, to find the humor in it. It's okay. It's okay if you're a little bit morbid. We're not going to tell anybody. As we talked about, pick the person you are telling the story to and write your key sentence. Go there. Start from there. 1,000 to 1,500 words, Monday night, on my desk, not 1 moment later. Assignment number 3, tell us about your first kiss, your first date, your first sleepover, a big first in your life. Similarly, pick the person you are telling the story to. Maybe it's the same as the last one. Maybe it's different. If it is different, take note of the way in which your storytelling style changes. Write your key sentence and go. Again, 1,000 to 1,500 words, Monday night. That concludes the lecture portion of tonight's class. Next week, something a fellow writer told me that has resonated with me, and we're going to get into it. When it's a good idea, you're always in trouble. Telling stories that are uncomfortable, that make you look bad, and that will make your grandfather deeply ashamed of you. When it's a good idea, you're always in trouble. Okay, folks, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to stop sharing now. Here we go. Okay, folks, I am so excited to get this guest. This is like the first name who popped into my head when I decided to do this class and to have guests. He is someone I've been a fan of for 25 years, more. He's a genius, and I don't want to waste any more time. Joel Stein. Hello. I'm
First
sorry
of
it's so
all,
long-winded.
thank you for saying such nice things about me.
Please.
Secondly, I listened to your class and I disagreed with everything you said.
Well, great. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Are we fighting?
Also, I thought I was being brought on because I'm an expert at stock photo captions. I thought we were mostly focused on that. I'm ready.
I think you could possibly do a better job. Shutterstock has a great person on staff, but I bet you could do better.
I do. I've seen that. For some reason, I've seen that photo before of the watch and the clock, and I do enjoy that.
It's great. Why would you do that to a human being? What does that benefit you in a world of iPhones to put an old-timey alarm clock in someone's face?
I love when things are just purely symbolic. When you break them down, they just get really, they make no sense. I love it.
Yeah. Joel, okay, so I was introduced to you via Time Out New York.
Oh my God, that's so great. That was my first writing gig outside of like college. I spent a couple years fact checking after college. And then the guy I had met as a fact checker at Martha Stewart, who became my friend when I was working there. And he worked on the production side of the magazine, which I don't even know if that exists anymore, but he got it printed. And he got hired by Time Out New York, and he convinced me to tell them I knew about sports, because they didn't know about sports, people there, and they were looking for someone to fill that role. And he figured once I got that role, I could write for all the other sections, which was totally true. That was so fun. That was like, I don't know if you had this, but when you get the first job you love, I didn't want to be anywhere else. Like I remember going on vacation with my girlfriend, and I think other people have this. I don't have this anymore, where I just couldn't stand being on vacation. I just wanted to be at that office and writing, and I felt that tension of not doing what I loved.
Yeah, I have had that too. It's a luxury, but sometimes they do send you packing. Sometimes they're like, you have to go.
You have to go where? On vacation?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I've had bosses be like, will you go away for a little bit?
Who told me to go on vacation?
It was when I was at MTV. I hadn't taken a vacation in a couple of years, because why would I? I didn't want to.
Right?
Why wouldn't I want to be there?
Now 49, that notion seems so far into me. Like I don't get that juice out of things anymore.
So tell me how you started your column at Time Out New York, because you were in the rotating back page, right? It was you and I believe John Sellers and maybe not.
Yeah, maybe. How do you know this, Brandon Holly?
Because I read it every week.
That's so crazy to me. You know, the only reason those other people had a column was because I'd written a column in college that was, I'll never be as famous as I was on my college campus. Like it was a huge hit. It was like, and then all I wanted was to recapture that. So when I got to Time Out New York, I asked for a column from the editor, and she kind of said no. And then I convinced her eventually, and she said, "Okay, you do it once a month. 3 other people on staff to do the other week of the month." And then they would like do 1 or 2 and get bored or not have anything new to say or not like the attention. So they would rotate through, but it was just an excuse for me to do it.
Yeah. What was your column in college?
Sellers, I got that job. This is an interesting. I got Sellers a job because we'd been fact checkers at Reader's Digest books.
Pardon me?
John Sellers wound up being at Time Out New York because I had met him when we were fact checkers at Reader's Digest books, and I brought him in.
Gotcha. What was the column in college?
It was the same thing I've written my whole life. It was it was what you're teaching right now. It's just personal essays.
Right. Had you been cranking on that kind of thing in high school, or was it just something you discovered in college?
Yeah, I wrote a humor column in high school, but it was more formatted like a Larry King 3-dot thing about the high school. So, but I got good attention from that too. Like I didn't know how to like play an instrument or play sports. Like this was my only chance to get attention. So I did it in high school, and I did it. I didn't have the guts freshman year of college. And it's all the stuff you're talking about, which is, even if it's something you want to do, people would often ask me, because I wrote a weekly column basically for decades. And people would say, how do you have something to say? Which I think is what you're talking about here. And my response was often, how do you have things to talk about?
Right.
So it's just a question of where you move the bar. And there are points in my life where I had tons of confidence and the bar was low. And there are points in my life where I had no confidence and the bar was really high. But it's really the same question of how do you have things to talk about with people.
Right. Did you feel like, when did you feel like you found your style?
Oh, it was when I wrote the column in college. I definitely, the very first column I submitted was a Dave Barry ripoff completely. Like very much like, so I copied his voice. And then I think the second or third column, I somehow found my voice. And I've taught a humor writing class, not at Dynasty Typewriter, it was at Princeton, but it was similar to this. And one thing I had the kids do was actually I had their roommates secretly tape record them during a conversation. And then I had them take the recording and type it so they could see what their natural voice looked like in print, and then try and boil that down to a more exciting version of how they talk.
Wow. The humiliation potential for that is extremely high. I won't lie.
Extremely high, but it's really hard to figure out what you naturally sound like. And your speaking voice is a real clue. There was a while when, if I was hanging out with my dad or I found myself bored around someone, I would try and picture their words just to see what different people's cadences look like. But I think it's important to figure out what you sound like and then boil that down to something much more interesting.
Right. Do you write like you talk?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've developed voices for different events. Like I have a preachery one if I'm trying to write something that's a little more serious. I probably copied that from Tom Junod, or Junod, however you pronounce the name. But it's that repetitive preachery thing that I've kind of learned to use occasionally, but most of the time it's how I talk.
Okay.
But of course you talk differently. Like you talk differently to your grandmother, and you have different voices when you speak. So I think you should have different writing voices. But if you can get the main version of how you talk, I think that's a good first step.
Okay. Would you recommend that for the students?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. You heard it. If you would like to take on an extra assignment, have someone furtively record you or record yourself and write it down. I can't imagine. I think I would die. But I do feel like I write in my own voice.
You do, right?
Yeah, I definitely do.
The whole idea of writing in a voice, I remember, struck me, and this is such a 49-year-old white guy thing to say, but when I read Catcher in the Rye, I was pretty young. And that was the first time I noticed voice. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like he's just talking, Holden Caulfield. And it was very, very compelling just for that reason.
Right. Yeah. And I found that to be true with like columnists and like Paul Rudnick. I feel like my first, like the first few things I wrote were pale imitations of Paul Rudnick.
But then you hear Paul Rudnick talk, David Sedaris talk, and it's like, oh, that's how they write.
That is who they are. That is
like in both of those guys, it's better when they read their stuff.
Yeah.
Because you can hear their voice even more.
Right. There's a very good question that is exactly what we're talking about right now. How do you avoid copying the styles of the writers you love? My personal answer for that is
do it.
You don't. You do, like for the first few months, you're gonna sound like them.
Yeah.
And you will find what is more authentically you. But yeah, for when you're just writing for yourself, it doesn't matter.
I had two things. I had a couple assignments in high school that seemed dumb at the time that were really useful, which was write in the style of another writer. It's like write in the style of Portrait of the Artist by James Joyce, write in the style of, and they seemed stupid, but they were really useful because I went taking a couple of those things from each person for myself. And I also think that I read somewhere that most creative endeavors, most new are just taking two old things and shoving them together. And so if you're taking someone else's style and telling your story with it, at least to start with, I don't think that's a crime at all. I mean, yeah, what is my style? My voice is probably like a mixture of Dave Barry and Spy Magazine and David Letterman. Like, it's not mine. Like, it's totally just copying some other people.
Right. But your like sensibility is that as well, because that's what you consumed when you were growing up. and you've added to it. I'll tell you a quick story because this is it's a comedy theater's live stream. Two performers who have performed often at Dynasty Typewriter. One is a 40s-ish comic, and one is a 30s-ish comic. I'm friendly with both. I mentioned something about the younger one to the older one, and the older one said, "That guy has just ripped me off. That guy completely ripped me off." And I was like, and I noticed, there were elements of the older guy's style in the younger guy's style, but he had come into his own as a comedian. I then mentioned the older comic to the younger comic, and he said, "For the first 2 years of my career, I completely ripped him off."
You did.
Yeah, it's just like I was just going on stage trying to be this person. If you know me in real life, I'll fill in the names, or $10 to the Biden campaign, and I'll tell you who they are. But yeah, it is. You kind of do have to do that for a little while, and then you find what's yours, and you gravitate toward that, and you are able to leave what is theirs behind. But yeah, I don't think it's something to be avoided, to be honest.
You're backing Biden. Have you given that a lot of thought? Or
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I was undecided until the debate. I didn't like it. I found
I agree. The debate kind of had me flip sides too.
Yeah. He kept interrupting. I can't have that.
I don't like that.
I don't like that at all. What do you do when you are blocked, when you are facing the empty page? Do you have, or does that even happen anymore?
I'm a very deadline. I'm getting paid. It's not the money that. It's the knowing that the money is an assurance that someone actually wants it,
mm-hmm.
and as the deadline is too. So I really have trouble getting enough confidence going if I don't know those things are there. I've really never written anything on spec, and not because I feel above it. It's just because that requires another level of confidence.
Right.
So I find that when I do feel writer's block, it is because I feel like writing is a confidence game.
Yeah.
Not in the con artist, well, a little bit in the con artist way, in that, I'm going to conceptually stand on the mount and deliver a sermon to whom about what? Like, no one wants that. So you have to kind of trick yourself into this confidence that someone wants to hear this. And I find that when I have writer's block, it's just a lack of confidence, just me getting in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I try and remember, I remember the work. I've had that really badly. But I also try and remember that you're more like a baseball player and that you just need a lot of swings and you don't know what's going to be a hit. So, 3/4 of what you actually produce, luckily with the internet, no one even sees it, right? There's so much content out there. Your bad stuff is going to disappear. And then hopefully 1 out of, 5 is a hit. And maybe 1 out of 20 is like a home run and people will actually see that. So I try to just realize that it's probably not going to be good. People aren't going to like it. No one's going to see it and no one's going to remember or care.
Okay, that's a little pessimistic.
But it's true. I mean, I've written so many columns and I would get in the rhythm of, I remember saying to editors who wanted to not have me run weekly, I was like, you run someone monthly, the expectations are a little higher. You run someone weekly and people are like, oh, he's grinding one out every week. They're going to be okay. And every so often one's going to be great.
Right.
Look at Tom Hanks movies. Tom Hanks had a movie where he was like a captain of a ship on Apple Plus like a couple weeks ago.
Gone.
No one remembers that. No one's like, Tom Hanks is a crappy actor. Tom Hanks is a failure.
Yeah.
Like he cranks out a lot of movies to be Tom Hanks.
Yeah. What's your advice for getting placed, for like putting things in, actual outlets that might be able to pay you $25?
I mean, I don't think you have the kind of control that you think you have in life. So there's so much. I always try and remember, and I can't keep this in my head, and this goes for like pitching TV pilots, it goes for pitching articles, that like, I remember I had a story run early or in the pandemic in the New York Times business section, and they made it like the New York Times read of the day, right? Mm-hmm. I pitched that story. It was about Zoom shirts. Like, in fact, I'm wearing one now. I'm wearing shorts and but the shirt you put on before a Zoom call. And I pitched that to like a bunch of people I respect and who like me. and they all said no. And so logic tells a good story. And I pitched to someone at the New York Times who was a friend of a friend who I think I'd met, but I forgot. And they were so excited about it. And it's just so illogical that like, oh, like 7 smart people said no, like who know this industry. But the New York Times business section the New York Times made their must read of the day. Like, you just need one person.
Right.
It's not like the J.K. Rowling story, the Sopranos story. But that people are always like, the Sopranos was pitched to every network and only HBO went for it. I was like, you can do that with everything. Like, it's very few things have a bunch of people clamoring for it. And some of those things aren't successful.
Right. What do you think it's useful to for a writer to have Substack or Medium or whatever, just to be cranking out stuff on the regular?
I have no idea.
No?
I'm like so old. I don't know how anything works anymore.
Yeah.
It sounds, I think if I could have got the confidence up when I was starting out to do that, I think that would have been great for me.
Right.
What do you think?
I think yes. And I think I personally should be doing it more just to have my own personal deadline to get over that sort of spec failure habit that I have. Just something that doesn't generate anything that isn't nobody's holding a old timey alarm clock to my face and making me do it. I'm just doing it just to I don't know, create more good habits.
Yeah. Also, I one other thing I told those few students that I had was, anytime you can get eyeballs in front of what you do, you're going to get reaction or lack of reaction. And that feedback is enormously helpful. Like feedback from real people, not just like your teacher or your friend. Like having stuff out there in the world and seeing what people react to is really valuable.
Right. We have some questions in the chat.
Oh my.
Get to. How do you keep a strong central message without it going stale in a larger piece? I feel like I'm beating a dead horse trying to connect everything back to a central message.
That thing you said earlier, which is like, know what, how did you put it?
Well, I don't know which part.
It was like this big on the whole screen.
Oh
like,
God. Okay. Oh, just like know what you're saying?
Yeah. I find that that's the whole key, that you think you know what you're saying, and then you sit down to write and suddenly realize it's not very clear.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what you're saying, if I know what I'm saying, I can write a piece in like 3 hours.
Right.
But if I don't, I'm just searching and looking and that's the job. It's figuring out what you want to say.
Yeah.
So how do you keep your strong central message is you're not beating a dead horse, because you're not stating your message out loud over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that if these details don't prove your thesis, then you don't need them. You don't need a description of what a person looks like unless that proves your point. Like,
right.
You have the details do the work. You're not repeating your thesis. It's just that if your story is like, I was just thinking about this guy when you said your first whatever, I was thinking about this guy who told me that the first time he made out with a woman and touched her breasts, he barfed because he didn't know it'd be full of fat, and he found he was gay, basically, right?
Yeah.
And like the strong central message is like he found this out about himself, but he doesn't have to keep repeating that. It's just telling the story of what happened.
Right. And maybe all of the details in that story are just a little bit wrong, just a little bit off, and he's starting to notice that maybe everything about it is not quite for him.
It's in your head. It's not on the page. It's just like in your head, does this help me prove that point?
Right.
It's just like if you're telling details of that story that are about, if you're telling that story about touching that woman's breasts, and you're setting up how excited you were, how nervous you were, that's all great. That's all proving your point. But if you suddenly if there's an interesting detail that's about, the game that was on TV, and you can't twist that to make it about your point. Yeah, you should be able to in that case. But if you can't, then you just toss it, no matter how good a detail it is.
Right.
It's stating like, this is when I found out I was gay.
Right.
Maybe you don't say that. Maybe you never say that.
Yeah. Also, if you feel like you're being a dead horse, maybe it's not a longer piece. If you were just writing for your own benefit, you know, if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, maybe you can express what you want to express in a shorter and pithier way. You know, we're just writing for ourselves right now. Amy Split wants to know, what do you do if you're trying to describe some character or scene that truly moves you and you just can't capture what makes you so in love with it or them?
So it's that thing you said about know what you want to say. Like,
Right.
you just have to sit and think. Like, the most of writing is like staring out a window. I remember when I started working at Time, I literally walked by this guy, James Kramer's, different Jim Kramer, his office, and I saw him staring out the window for a long time. I just was like, oh my God, he's like a writer.
Mm-hmm.
He was thinking. Like, it just blew me away. But yeah, a lot of it is like, well, figure out why that was important to you. Figure it out. Like, what made that so, what are the things what did you feel? Like, put yourself back in that place and at that moment and just like, don't wind up at the end of what it was, but go through the whole process of where you were before you had that feeling.
Yeah.
When you're noticing what it is and why you can't figure out what it is, like, go back to the moments and figure it out. Yeah.
And it's, it's difficult to say, like, for example, I don't know the specific example that she's asking about here, but like to put across why in my youth I was awed by a person. That is difficult to put into a few words, but that is also not how you experience that feeling. You experience it because you're like, you can't believe he's got those shoes or whatever. Like, you can't, or the way he walks or something. Like, there is some emotional connection that you have to an aspect of that person or thing, and not the thing
all the way back in your life to remember the feelings, to remember the details of what it was, and like before you knew what you know now. Yeah, it's work, and it's hard to remember all that stuff. But that's the interesting part, not the eventual feeling at the end.
Right. Again, it's all detail. Have you worked in an unconventional or experimental style that has pushed it beyond classic memoir writing, Joel Stein? I will say, I myself am trying to write a spec pilot, and I'm going crazy with it.
I've written a bunch of pilots.
Yeah, I've never in that way, and it feels very daunting to me.
Well, the thing that's daunting about script, the thing that's daunting about writing at length, this from writing a book, but the longer something is, the more the story rules apply. Mm-hmm. So you can get away with a lot of stuff in a one-page essay you can't get away with in a book. And scripts, sitcom scripts to some extent, movie scripts to a larger extent, require serious storytelling rules. Like, they start to really, you can't evade them after a while. Mm-hmm. So that's what makes it so challenging. It's just a lot of like logic puzzle work. Right. But experimental styles, I've tried some things that really failed. There's something I still want to crack, which is basically just taking the rules of postmodernism, like Pale Fire and Pynchon and stuff, and applying it to nonfiction. Mm-hmm. And every time I do it, it comes out like really flat and cheesy.
He froze up.
Yeah, no, I've tried a lot of things that work.
Yeah. Okay.
And I haven't been this good of a writer or mature of a writer, but a lot of writers, as they get older, start to drop the shtick and all the experimental stuff and get really bare bones, like Cormac McCarthy, The Road, kind of bare bones. And I don't know. You start to see that like the story matters more than your ego. And I don't know. I haven't gotten there.
Yeah. Have you ever had anything that you wrote just be savaged by an editor or a peer, or changed into something completely different?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I've taken my name off things.
Really?
Oh yeah. And I try to be nice about it because it's such a dick move, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want my name on this after what you did. Like, I tried to be really cool about it, but yeah, I've had.
Can you say an example?
Yeah, I was at Time magazine for like 20 years. It happened occasionally there. And I've had people ruin things I wrote, for sure. But, you know, I've also had editors greatly improve what I wrote. I've had editors save my ass because, like, I shouldn't have done that, you know. So yeah, I've had all the experiences. I mean, I think of that kind, and I think you just have to. I always try and think of myself as someone who loves to write and is getting. I always think of me being an employee by someone who's willing to distribute my stuff. Like, I've given it to them, and they're willing to spend money and resources distributing this, and so I'm grateful for that. And if I want to go be an artist and write something myself and put it up online, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't confuse the two. Like, I'm an artist, not an artist.
Right. Catherine Markovich asks, how do you develop an instinct for overwriting or underwriting? It's an interesting question. I will just say, at first, I tried to practice overwriting just to have stuff to pull out, because the fear of, like, it's like when you're doing a to-do list, when you're just feeling low and you make a to-do list for the day, and then you put on it something you've already done just so you can cross it out. I have definitely done that in the past, just because under when I have an assignment to do something, if I haven't done enough, I go crazy. If I've done too much, then I can relax and prune and edit.
I'm a brutal cutter.
Yeah.
Everything's better shorter.
Sure.
Everything. So yeah. My last book was as short as they would let me and still charge full price. Mm-hmm. I would love to have cut a ton more.
Really?
I've rarely seen something shorter that wasn't better.
Yeah.
Is that what she meant by overwrite? Maybe not. She meant the being too descriptive or overwrought, or what did?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But we can.
These aren't real people, are they?
No, they're not. Of course not.
Is it just you wanting to get tips from me?
These are Russian bots, actually. And you have adapted personal things into scripts. Do you find that the process is different? Do you find that you're going to different places, or is it a story that already has a beginning, middle, and an end, and you can kind of rely on it?
No, like I said, scripts are brutal in their structure. Like, there's no forgiveness, and all the things you can do in print is like, and then I thought about this and remembered this, and like every shtick, and I'll distract you with this like funny, like, no one cares. They just want your story. And script, it's brutal.
Yeah, that's why I'm terrified of it. Joel Stein, thank you so much for joining us.
You grade everyone at the end, since it's a class. Do I get a grade? Yeah,
no, absolutely. A-. I do have some notes.
Oh, that's great. No, I'm always thrilled with an A-.
Oh, good. Okay, well, good. That's what you get. Joel Stein, thank you so much.
I love the way you decorated your locker. I think you did a great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to have to fix this. I didn't know this was going to be everything.
Yeah, Lionel Richie, what do you got?
7 months?
Tickets to a Giants game. What's going on?
Yeah, that's basically, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's really bad. I need to move these out and put something proper in.
Right.
A grown man, for God's sake. Thank you, 1 million. In defense of elitism, you signed a copy for my brother. I don't think he appreciated it. But
did I write something mean? That's my favorite thing to do when I write in a book. Did I?
The what?
Did I write something mean to your brother? Which is what
you did actually write something a little bit mean to my brother. Which is that I'm sorry you're not an elite like your famous brother or whatever.
So I'm so uncomfortable signing books that if people are on a line, I will ask them something about them and I will roast them.
Yeah.
All I know how to do, and no one likes that. No one wants that in their book.
Everybody likes that. Everybody likes that. No, and I don't think it was the inscription that he predicted you with. He's just kind of a Fox Newsy guy. So I think he might have we haven't gotten deep in it, but I think he planted a seed, and that's important.
That's what I do.
Great, Joel Stein, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We, at the last minute, got a question in from Randy Kane, who wanted to know, how would you consider starting out now in 2020 to write or connect to big name publishers such as New York Post? Listen, well, the Times I can't speak to, But I can say this. The Post has verticals, right? So they have, the one that I'm thinking of is Decider, which, Topo Chico, which is all about television. A lot of good recaps go in there, a lot of good industry stories go in there, a lot of columns about, this is the 30th anniversary of the first episode of Beverly Hills 90210, whatever. All goes in Decider. And it's all online. And they are always accepting pitches. If you're wild about television, you can probably pitch them a story idea, which is something we'll get into a bit later. But yeah, get into the New York Magazine verticals. Figure out exactly where you fit. There are ways to pitch them kind of through, not the farm team, but they're verticals that are specific to a topic that you might be able to speak to well. And we'll say all of this in a much better way in maybe next class or the class after. The assignments I will send again in a little recap. Get on the Discord. If you haven't, if you did the Pupils Delight thing and you haven't sent me your stuff, send it to me, and I will take a look and get it back to you in the next couple of days. Thank you so much to all of you and to Joel Stein. And that is it. Everybody stay safe, and I will see you in 1 week.